Working as a journalist involves exposure to public risks, but if you are a woman journalist, the insecurity is even greater. And why is it different? Because the threats that women journalists receive may be directly connected to the fact of being a woman. According to a recent UNESCO survey, 73% of women journalists surveyed experienced some kind of online violence. These attacks not only impact their work, they also have psychological consequences, and sometimes online attacks lead to physical ones. States and newsrooms are among the key players that need to combat gender-based violence against journalists. Paulina Gutierrez from Article 19 explains what states need to focus on to address gender-based threats and attacks against journalists.
What we identified as Article 19 is that the state has failed to identify and to recognize that there are these differences. They are failing also to consider these additional risks in their risk assessments, for example, to determine some measures, or whenever they are enacting some laws on the safety of journalists or many other legislative proposals. So they are not considering how this would impact, particularly in some of the women's journalistic activities.
To address these threats, Article 19 advocates for an approach that recognizes the links between gender equality and freedom of expression, one that also considers the various feminisms women are adopting for their safety.
We have tried to look into how the policies on non-discrimination and the safety of journalists are related to each other. And what we have found is definitely that they are unrelated. And often when you start looking into a case, for example, of access to justice, when we talk about impunity for crimes against women journalists, let's say an attack of sexual nature, there is a torture with some sexualized aspects into it. What we have seen is that the justice system often replicates these discrimination-based obstacles that women has to access to justice in general. To have a stronger UN plan of action and all its related measures is to have a stronger gender lens. And this means to consider other groups that are facing also discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, of race, ethnicity, and many other factors that are intersecting with the way they exercise their freedom of expression.
Morwenna Darley from the Thomson Reuters Foundation underlines the relevant role newsrooms can play in protecting their journalists.
They have a duty of care to their journalists as employers, but also from a business sense, you want to protect your staff. You want to make sure that no one is shying away from stories or from perspectives just because they fear this onslaught being attacked and being directed at them. Just as newsrooms invest the resources in terms of lawyers, in terms of editing practices, in terms of sending their journalists to heat training, flak jackets and all the equipment needed to cover violent and conflict areas, that's the same approach that newsrooms have to think of when addressing the issue of online safety.
UNESCO and Thomson Reuters Foundation developed resources for newsrooms and women journalists on the topic of gendered violence. For Thomson Reuters Foundation, cooperation efforts focusing on the unique strengths of the different actors are key to tackling the problem.
So coordinating efforts from different agencies working on the issue and helping the development and implementation of legislation and mechanisms in favor of ending gender-based violence. Again, bringing the power of journalism and the law together, which is our unique offering. I think policy making should really take that into account.
Identity factors such as gender have a key impact on safety of journalists. They affect journalists' rights to exercise freedom of expression and the public's right to access a plurality of information and viewpoints. Different actors need to come together to find solutions and take actions.